Good morning, everyone. For any of you that have not joined us before, we are HR Collaborative. We're a community of fractional HR experts who help small to mid-sized organizations make work better by providing HR talent and solutions when and where they need it. So in today's cafe, we're going to talk about combating burnout. So a sneak peek at our agenda here today. So if this is your first time at one of our cafes, welcome. If you've joined before, happy to have you back. All right, so meet our experts for today. If you've joined us in a cafe before, I'm probably a familiar face. I am Lisa Brown, the Vice President of Client Services here at HR Collaborative. I've been in the HR field for more than 15 years. I've worked in manufacturing, retail, and consulting here at HR Collaborative for the last 10. I've helped nearly every role in HR up to where I'm at here today. Some of my favorite topics are total rewards, compensation, employee engagement, and people analytics. Our guest speaker today is our very own Chief People Officer at Kinexus Group, Erin Wright. She's joined Kinexus in June of 2018 and focuses on the organization's people strategy, creating a fun, engaging environment where employees have the best possible tools, perks, and benefits. Prior to joining Kinexus, Erin worked at Lakeland Health and as the manager of recruitment and onboarding, and has overseen the development of business partnerships within the community, colleges, and universities. So welcome, Erin. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about burnout, right? So a lot of times when people talk about burnout, or how they say burnout is somebody's, they've lost their cool at work, they've had a big explosion, they quit. We think that's burnout. That's what burnout looks like. And that's not really the case. There's lots of signs of burnout, what it can look like before it gets to that level. So burnout is really just an emotional, physical, or mental exhaustion due to stress. And but everybody on this phone call has experienced this at some point in the last, 3-4 years. But how do we recognize burnout, right? Could just be fatigue. It could be, cynicism, we're being really critical. We're just disengaged, obviously reduced performance, kind of detached from the team or from the work that they're doing. And really just being irritable, more irritable than they have been before, or what would normally irritate anyone. So Erin, I'm curious, you've got a big role, responsibilities for Kinexus Group and all of our subsidiaries and sister companies. Tell me a little bit about how you deal with burnout at Kinexus in your role and as a leader for an organization.
Yeah, that's great. So it's funny when I saw, you kind of introduce us as the experts in burnout. So I certainly hope people aren't taking it the way of like, I'm so good at handling burnout. But for me personally, and, as people were joining the cafe and coming in, there was some conversation around it's back to school. And so this is the perfect timing, I think, to be having these conversations, because certainly, I don't know everyone's life outside of work, but I know personally, I'm also, I'm a mother of 3. It's a big year for us. We have one starting high school, we have one in the middle school, and then one in the elementary school. So I certainly can relate, Lisa, to you with having kids in different schools and different start times, and on top of that, having a full-time job. And really, I take my job really seriously, trying to make it a good place for everyone, because everyone comes to work with different things. And so recognizing that and knowing that, I think for me specifically, I've never been really the best person of separating work and life, my home life. And so, for me, it's being conscious of that, it's being aware of it, having, I try very hard to have good daily habits of, getting plenty of sleep and movement and stretching and things like that when I can. Certainly, leaving a busy meeting or an intense meeting and just being able to go for a quick walk, or just to clear my mind before I reset for, whatever the next item on my calendar is. But from more of a work type perspective, I think for me, it's been really good because I have a relationship with my boss, my direct manager, who is our president and CEO, and having open dialogue with him. There are so many moving pieces at Kinexus Group, as I'm sure there are, at many organizations. And I think being able to have those real conversations of, let's truly prioritize what's going on, because when everything becomes a priority, I think that's when the heaviness starts to settle and starts to really kind of take over. And it's saying, okay, having, first that communication, that open communication, and saying, okay, let's talk through what really needs to be done and let's rework timelines. And I recognize not everyone may be in that situation, but when this topic came up and the idea of burnout and talking through burnout, just instantly where my mind always goes to is that relationship between, from a work perspective, between an employee and their direct supervisor, and really, ensuring that there are relationships being built, because everyone is so different. And, hearing the stuff that you love to focus on in HR, are actually the items that aren't my favorite things. And so just knowing that of, maybe some of those type of items that I have to work through may cause more stress to me, but for you, it's probably nothing. So I think it's being able to recognize, what are those strengths, what are those passions, what are those things, but having that communication for me specifically with my boss, so we're on the same page, is what really helps me.
Yeah, no, that relationship is critical, and having that dialogue is definitely helpful in managing expectations and kind of level setting as you're navigating all the moving pieces. So thinking of, your role as a leader, and we've probably got lots of, leaders on the cafe here today. What's important for leaders to think about when it comes to burnout?
And I'm working pretty often with different leaders, and we've had a number of new leaders join our organization over the past couple of years. And so often I find in my conversations, in my experiences, that managers or directors or leaders they feel like they have to have all of the answers, and they feel like they have to have solutions for whatever may be coming their way. And so I think the understanding and the realization of, we don't have to have all of the answers, but I think helping work through solutions and help really trying to understand what is causing additional stress, or what is, was it communication? Was it, and so often what I have found, it truly is this lack of, maybe I think I'm communicating a certain way, and perhaps it's not being communicated that way, or it hasn't been received that way. And so I often think that there is a disconnect, that managers feel like they have to have answers, and they have to have solutions, and it's not so much the case. I think it's more working with each individual employee, because again, everyone is coming to work with something totally different. They all respond to things differently, but I think the more leaders understand their employees, or at least have those relationships, they're able to kind of work through things differently with each person. And I know that that's hard, and it's so easy to say, because it takes time to build those relationships, and it takes time to meet with each individual employee. And I hear it, and I'm sure people on the call are feeling the same way of, oh my gosh, it's so easy to say it. And yeah, like, we can preach this all day, every day. But it really is taking that time, I think, in the long run, is what really is helpful. I also think, and I deal with it often here too, of setting those expectations and being clear in, what really is the job, what are the responsibilities of that person in the job? Because I think so often there's this job description, but then there's kind of how we actually do the work. And so I think managers taking time to really explain those expectations and talk through those, but then also listen to employees on, they have ideas, and part of when I think people get into, burnout mode or into little funks, is if they feel like they're not being heard, or if they're being told, this is this is how you do it. Well, there's probably other ways to get to the same endpoint. So I think, you know, from a manager perspective of really being mindful of those pieces, like, yep, there might be a way that I would do something, but it might be totally different than how Lisa, you would handle something. And it's okay that we do things differently if the outcome still is met. You know, the other thing that really lately I've been noticing, and really have been trying to work with different leaders on is communication style and the language that we use, or the words that we use, or how we send emails. You know, certainly if it's, you know, a subject line is urgent, or if, you know, using the, I'm sure there's a technical term, but like the exclamation point for like an urgent email, or,
Yeah.
you know, saying something, I need something ASAP. You know, recognizing how that can come across to team members. You know, again, everyone responds differently, but I can tell you and there's a reason, I get it, there's a reason why it may be an emergency to people. But it's recognizing and understanding there could be so many other things that are going on too. But again, the more we understand one another and recognize what we have going on, changing those words, I think will help kind of alleviate some of this like anxiety that some people may feel. Because I don't know that I've ever received an email when it's urgent or get this to me ASAP that I've ever felt good, because, you know, it kind of paralyzes you for a minute and then you start thinking, oh shoot, is this now a priority?
Yeah, yeah, you see that exclamation point again. I don't know the technical term either. So, but yeah, you see that and you're like, whoa, I have to drop everything and address it. And what may be urgent for someone else may not seem as urgent as other things because you're juggling a lot. So, leaders definitely understanding what, you know, what their team are facing, and the different things that could potentially cause that stress. You know, because it's different for every person, like you had mentioned. You're in a unique role, as several on our call probably are as well, as they're a leader, but they're also in HR. So we know, you know, leaders have some responsibility to know their team, but what are some common disconnects between leaders and employees when it comes to burnout? What are the differences or disconnects between their perspectives?
Sometimes I think, or what I find is really this misunderstanding that, you know, a leader or a manager or director, you know, doesn't really understand what their employee is doing. And so, you know, this thought that they continue to send, you know, tasks or things to be done, and they don't really know what it's like in my day-to-day. And so I think, you know, that's where, again, building those relationships and taking the time to meet with employees to really understand, you know, their side of it or their perspective. Recognizing many people in leadership, like we're being pulled all these different directions, and yep, we have these ultimate goals that we're trying to meet, we're trying to motivate, trying to, you know, inspire team members to do things. But I think again, it's so individual, where there's not just like a, you know, a statement that someone can say, or just, you know, this magic wand that we can wave and, you know, everything's going to be great for everyone. I really think it is so individualized, because where one person may be feeling very overwhelmed with work that, you know, they're working through, there's someone else on that team, maybe their burnout is being caused from, maybe I'm just not challenged, maybe I'm bored, maybe I'm tired of kind of doing the same type of thing. And that's where I think with leaders having more of those one-on-one conversations and really getting to know their people, they can help say, okay, we don't want to lose you, you're bored, well, let's think of different projects, let's think of different things that we can start doing to help challenge you, to kind of hopefully, you know, reinvigorate some of that passion and excitement that maybe was once there. But I think that's what's so hard when it comes to burnout, because there's so many different things that can lead to it. But until you start asking the questions and really working individually with employees, you don't really know.
Yeah, having that communication is key, right? That's key in every aspect of our lives, right? Not just work and combating burnout, but it really is key in all aspects. So I was kind of alluding to it earlier, you know, as a leader and HR, what is HR's role when it comes to combating burnout for an organization? It can seem overwhelming, I'm sure, but you know, what can we do in our role as human resource professionals?
You know, I think one thing, and hopefully I can explain this. It's like in my mind, but hopefully I can get it out to everyone, how it makes sense in my mind. You know, certainly it's offering different, you know, benefits, ways, different resources, things to support employees, leaders, everyone within the organization. So, you know, at Kinexus Group, we have a very, in my opinion, a very generous PTO program. And so it's reminding people to take time off. I know, you know, personally for myself and for people that I work with, and I'm a planner, so I already have the school schedule. I already know when spring break is. I know when all the breaks are, so I've already put in my PTO. But I think it's reminding people the importance of taking time off, and I get it. Some organizations, you know, may not have significant amounts of time off, but I think, you know, that encouraging people to take time just to be able to refocus and just step away for a little bit. Certainly EAP programs at you know, here at Kinexus, we have an EAP program, we have free mental health services. And I say these things because yes, those are really important resources, but I think it's important for us in HR to also recognize it's good to have those resources, but it's also on us to work closely with leadership to ensure that we're mindful of all these things, and that, you know, going back to that conversation earlier with job descriptions, that we're not making job descriptions, for example, so overwhelming or putting so much on one person that we're actually causing much of this. You know, certainly there are times where there's just a disconnect, and maybe it is a wrong fit, or the job just isn't what someone thought it was. But I think us being able to have those conversations with leaders as they're creating new jobs, or jobs change, you know, certainly over time jobs evolve and change, and being aware of that and saying, okay, is it time, you know, that we break up duties, or really being that thought partner? Because I think there are times where I'm in conversations and it's maybe common sense, you know, for me, it just seems very obvious, like, oh my gosh, but working with leaders to really understand the impact that these type of things have on their employees, I think is something that's really important for HR professionals, and obviously helping to be a facilitator at times. I mean, I'm always trying to coach employees if they're struggling. And typically my first question is always, well, have you talked to your boss? You know, have you talked to your manager about this? And so often the answer is no. And it's okay, well, let's talk about what that conversation could look like. You know, so I think from our role on how we can really help different departments and employees kind of work well together, is a big piece for us. And I do think that we're pretty fortunate at Kinexus Group. We have an individual who her whole role is organization development. And so, you know, she's been able to develop a lot of training opportunities, development opportunities. We have a competency model to help leaders help their employees. You know, whether it's, if they're not happy in their role, well, how can we get you to where you wanna be? But I think, you know, that's kind of an offshoot of HR. She's not dealing specifically with some of the HR things, but she's been a really great resource of helping to build. So again, going back to those expectations and people, you know, clarity of roles, that people can start to really understand how this fits into the big picture.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, and that is really helpful. And I know that some of the organizations on here, they don't have the ability to have, you know, a Barbara on staff to be able to do all of that for their teams. And so the manager or the leaders and HR can only do so much. And at some point we have to put some ownership on employees. You know, real quickly before we break into our breakout sessions, what can employees do to help combat burnout?
I mean, selfishly, it's kind of like some of the stuff that I try and be mindful of too, of self-care, of, taking those walks if I'm feeling a certain way, trying to eat right, exercise, get plenty of sleep, all the things, that I'm sure all of our doctors tell us to do when we go to our, annual checkups. I think that's important. I think, certainly taking time off, if you're able to take time off when you start to feel that, I think, again, going back to oftentimes it seems like managers need to have the answers for everything, but I also think it's important for employees to start addressing things and bringing them up to their managers when they start to feel, because burnout it's not like one day I go home and I tell my husband I'm burnt out. It's like happens over, it happens over time. And I think the more employees can start leading conversations too and bringing things to their manager's attention, I think that's helpful. And certainly self-development, I think so often too, in my experience, many times employees are, wanting to be told what they should be working on, but it's completely on them too of saying, well, what do you want and where do you want to go and grow? And so I think having people take time to kind of reflect on those things can help as well.
Yeah, there's definitely ownership at all levels, right? And knowing when to say, and not being afraid to say, like, I'm taking a mental health day, or I'm taking a personal day just to kind of rest and recoup. Like that's okay. You don't have to be sick, so sick that you can't work or do anything. It's okay to take personal days to take care of yourself and do those self-care things. Well, Erin, thank you so much. It's great insight, great feedback on the topic. So now we're going to give the rest of the group some opportunities to go collaborate together, kind of share their thoughts, their feedback. As we are zoomed off into our Zoom rooms, we would like our group to start talking about what challenges you are facing related to burnout. We talked about a couple of perspectives from Erin and Kinexus, but we want you guys to share that with each other. Hello. Well, welcome back, everyone. Nice to have you back in the larger group setting. I'm sure you were enjoying the conversation. I could tell by the number of notes that our note takers were taking, capturing the themes during that breakout session, that there was a lot of discussion and themes that rose to the surface. So some of the things that we noticed or that we saw common amongst all the groups are listed here. The lingering COVID burnout, that was a big one. We're still experiencing understaffing and turnover. And some organizations are struggling with coming to terms with COVID era business decisions that are still impacting their organization. On top of that, there's, economic changes requiring companies to lay off, downsize. And then when team members go on leave of absence, the teams that are already stretched thin now have to absorb more, and it contributes to that burnout. Some challenges identifying the difference between burnout and everyday stress. It's the everyday stress, the everyday part of that everyday stress that can really lead to burnout, right? It's how are we addressing the signs of that stress? How are we trying to alleviate that before it turns to full out, burnout? Some few groups were talking about measuring burnout. How do we measure? I wish there was a quick magic answer to say, oh, this is the one metric you need to measure. It will tell you exactly how you're doing on burnout for your employees, but there's not. There's multiple ways. I saw some solutions planning in there, giving employees the opportunity to provide feedback, measuring your employee net promoter score, those regular check-ins, getting that pulse from your staff on how they are doing. The 24/7 connection to work in the remote hybrid work environment. I think this is definitely one of the symptoms of our COVID era business decisions. Not that we all couldn't do that before, but it's much more prevalent. And so that's constant connectiveness for those that have that remote or hybrid work capability is when to disconnect. Erin had, spoken to this and how they navigate this at Kinexus Group, but really setting realistic expectations. And I think this is, it really is a two-way street. So the organization has to look at the positions, the job descriptions. Is it realistic that the work be done that we're identifying in this job that must be done within the time frame or status, full-time, part-time capacity of this role? On the flip side, it's looking at the employees and saying, is it realistic for me to do this job? Do I have the skills, the ability, the capacity to do this job? So some great examples of, understanding, job fit, creating career pathing, succession planning, leaning on employee development. Some ways that this is, can be measured or mitigated or addressed is our organization runs on EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system. So understanding, do the employees get it, want it, have the capacity to do the role? Other ways organizations can operate is to do career pathing or career mapping. One tool that we've found to be really helpful, really successful in doing that or measuring that is JOFI, job fit assessment. So it's identifying the duties of the job and personal characteristics, work characteristics, and making sure that they're aligned. And sometimes it's just that, the individual's not in the right role, but there may be another position to be very successful in your organization. And then another one I saw rise to the surface, and especially for those of us in HR, is it's difficult to find a benefits package that's really attractive to everyone. So how do we know if we're offering the benefits that help alleviate employee stressors? It's different for every employee, as Erin had indicated. Want to give our facilitators a shout out, as well as an opportunity to share any things that came to the surface during the discussion that we didn't capture here. I guess without putting anybody on the spot, even though that's totally what I'm going to do. Jamie, anything in your group that you discussed that we didn't capture in our themes here?
Well, I will just say that the leaders in the group I was in, all the employees are so lucky to have them, because it was a very insightful and emotionally intelligent, and great intentioned group. So that's incredible. But yes, absolutely. So in the chat, when we first started, we kind of, someone put in are you burned out or are you bored out? So
I love that. Yeah, I saw that.
The great questions around discovering, are you overwhelmed or are you maybe underwhelmed? Is it lack of engagement because you're bored and you need to, so just, I think there was some really good questions raised. Another good approach is sometimes when you just need to vent or be heard and understood, Lisa, like you mentioned, sometimes you just need a friend or a peer or a supervisor to sit in that mud puddle with you, but sometimes you need them to help you figure out a way to get out of the mud puddle. So simply asking the question, am I here just to support you and be frustrated and listen? Or do you want help solving and giving you a hand out of the mud puddle? So we had a good discussion around that.
I love that analogy too. I got a chuckle out of it, but it's so true.
Yeah, it was from a conference I went to probably 20 years ago. We still use it in my family today, like just sit in the mud puddle with me or help me get out of it. So they talked about performance reviews. There was a group that has a really creative way. So rather than maybe merely measuring KPIs and output, they're really tapping into the I think the word you used was dream. Like, what are your dreams? What are your, getting creative with that performance review. The other thing too was lots of check-ins, whether it be a weekly pulse survey or regular surveys, whether they're anonymous or otherwise, but just again, to sort of open the lines of communication and create as many opportunities for that dialogue as possible. So.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Caitlin, what about your group? What rises to the surface?
Are you picking me?
Oh,
no, she picked me, but you can go next, Teresa.
Well,
go ahead, Teresa.
I was breakout room number 2.
Oh, okay. I'm not going in any specific order, but yeah, go ahead, Teresa. One or two things that rose to the surface for you.
Yeah, we had a great discussion. It was a great group. There's a myth that setting boundaries is selfish, and not true. Someone recommended a book called Boundaries by Henry Cloud. So just, as it relates to how do you take ownership of burnout, not getting there as much as you can, so you can be there for your team. So we talked about that. And then someone had this wonderful saying, which says, you have to be the unapologetic gatekeeper to your own sanity. So we had a lot of one-liners and a lot of great, just as it relates to taking ownership and responsibility for yourself as it relates to combating stress, so you don't get to the point where it's burnout, or you're experiencing burnout.
Very nice. Love it.
I'm sorry to whatever, but it's reminding me that another good dialogue was how, as leaders, when you're so busy putting on the oxygen mask on everybody else, how are we communicating with each other to support each other when you're the one exhausted by trying to help others or be aware of others, how they're feeling? So
Yeah. Well, on the airplane, they tell you to put your mask on first, right?
Yep.
Yep. Very good. Kaylin,
Yeah.
one or two things from your group? Anything?
One of my favorite one-liners that we had was mindful delegation, and just being really aware, especially when it comes to middle management, who can easily get burnt out as well, because they're kind of the bridge from the top to the entry level.
Sure.
But then we oftentimes view delegation as one, it's a great leadership practice to delegate to our teams. It also can build capabilities and really get people bought in because they're involved, they're owning something. But are we making sure that that person has the capacity, and they might not be comfortable speaking or setting those boundaries? Like Teresa's talking about, healthy boundaries are great, but some of us don't have that practice or don't feel comfortable doing that. And so being really mindful with delegation of, what are we delegating? What are we asking? What's already on their plates? So that was a really good call out that I really enjoyed. And then also we talked about benefits and non-benefits that can support avoiding burnout. One of the things that we talked about was, what are some things in home life that employers can help through kind of creative benefits that can take pressure off of employees from a home perspective, whether that be, do we offer a food HelloFresh kind of something to repay that for employees, or different things like that, or employee resource groups? Do we have maybe a rec league was something that was mentioned as being, it gets people out and moving and having fun. But how can we as HR really encourage finding ways to support our employees to avoid burnout that aren't necessarily in the workplace, but surrounding the mental wellness of that person so they can show up at the workplace their best selves?
Yeah, those are great. Julie, anything else? I know we covered a lot. Anything else? One or two things that rose to the surface?
We talked about, like, one of the questions we talked through was, has there been a bold step that you've taken when kind of push came to shove, and how did that work out for you? And so we had some sharing of just finally realizing that something had to give, and I asked for help and I got it. Like, actually, like, taking that bold step to say, I can't do this to this degree anymore, or at this level, I need some help, and people pitched in and helped. And that is a bold step for many. To Kaylin's point, not all of us are good about delegating it and seeking that support, but when you do, and you see the success story, and you can kind of like highlight that for others to celebrate. Others, it came to, the messaging isn't getting to leaders. We need leaders to start hearing it in a different way. And sometimes a bold move might be just, okay, I've got to go. And luckily, in the example that was shared, it worked out. The leader finally heard and was responding differently. And was able to work toward some more resolution. We also talked about personalities in the workplace and how we're all going to navigate that a little differently. We got into some of the, DISC, and then Splash was another assessment that one group is using, just to kind of talk about how we all bring different strengths to the organization, and how do we navigate that to make sure the right work's happening in the right place, and how we're supporting each other through those strengths. So those are a few additional points that we had that weren't potentially already mentioned. Compassion fatigue is the last one. I don't think that we really got to an aha moment with that, other than with those boundaries of, making sure that when you recognize you're at that point, taking time for yourself, whether it's a walk, whether it's closing your door, and just, knowing it's not a good time to continue to take that on. That's okay too, taking that protective step to make sure that you don't get to a point.
Right. It's okay to say no, right? All right. We'll definitely want to leave some time for Q&A. what opportunities and challenges did you discuss? If you'd like to pose a question to Erin or myself, or just to the broader group, please use the chat to ask your questions. Matt has bravely volunteered to be the speaker for the chat. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. If we don't get to all of the questions that are posed, we'll make sure that we follow up with the answers to those questions after the cafe today. All right, so chat questions. Who's got one for the group? Erin, I'd love to hear from you. I don't see many questions coming in the chat, but I'd love to hear from you. Is there anything that you've done personally to combat burnout? You had mentioned that sometimes you go for walks, but is there anything that you've done that you found successful in helping you manage becoming burnout?
I do think I learned, well, not many years ago, but years ago, I have had different individuals that I've reported to over the years. And I remember it was early on in my career, and like kids were really little, and I never took time off. And when I had left that organization, I had this whole huge pool of time, and it was like, that company did pay out any unused PTO, but I remember thinking, oh my goodness, like, why have I not spent, to your point, more time on myself? And so I started that like 7 years ago of saying, never again am I going to do that, because if I don't focus on myself, I can't be the best for others. And so, I mean, it really is, it's kind of silly, because my coworkers now, I kind of had shared earlier, like, I am a planner and I do have my time, set aside. And now that the kids are going to be going back to school, you better believe I'll be taking some time where it's just Erin time. And that's what it's called. It's Erin time. And nope, I'm not grabbing lunch with anyone. It's just kind of time to really do whatever needs to be done to help clear my mind. That's been helpful. And actually hearing some of the conversations that came out of the breakout rooms, we've been struggling, and I was in my own breakout room for those that are on the call. And I said, I never say the word COVID anymore, because it really had such an impact on the organization here that I'm at Kinexus Group. But one thing that we still struggle to figure out, we used to do something called Kinexus Strong. So to the point of what you can be doing with employees. And it used to be for an hour every Thursday afternoon, and people would get together. It was about team building. We would, it would be anything. Maybe it was a Zumba class, maybe it was beach volleyball, maybe it was basketball. The idea was that we would get together, we sweat together, or just go on walks. We'd walk, we're headquartered out of Benton Harbor. So we would, walk the beach or whatever. And that was such a great way to build team and get to know people from different work groups. And we did. At one point, we had a bowling team, we had a softball team, we had a soccer team. And I'll be completely honest, it's been a struggle of trying to get that back. And I think it's because, it's people have so many things outside of work also to commit to doing something kind of, maybe after hours or something. But that is something that we have a group, we call it the KEG. People that are part of it are keggers, and it's Kinexus Experience Group. And the idea is that the whole team is figuring out fun, engaging things to do. But that even has been a struggle because again, you have to be an active participant, and people have ideas, but then it's, well, I don't want to plan that event, or I don't want to do that. So definitely working through. So I'll be excited with follow-up from this of just, other organizations of kind of re-engaging some of that excitement that we used to have, I think, prior.
Yeah.
We've
Great. We had a
got
couple of, oh yeah, sorry, Matt, I saw them come in. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we got a couple quick ones. I don't know if quick necessarily, but how do you combat burnout that is a result of employee turnover? Sometimes people have a lot on their plate that can't be avoided, especially in smaller organizations.
Yeah. Is that just to Lisa or I
sorry, it's
think,
just open.
Yeah, we certainly, so Kinexus Group is made up of multiple subsidiaries that kind of make up this entire group. So we have different organizations that are all part of the family of Kinexus Group, and some of I call them divisions. have experienced higher turnover than other areas. And, you know, it to be completely honest, it has been a struggle, and that's where it really has been working with leadership. And we've had significant changes in our leadership also, but really getting leadership to understand, again, and I know I sound like a broken record, but going back and meeting with those employees and really coming up with a plan of what is realistic. Because, you know, I think it's completely unrealistic to think when you have significant turnover that you're able to meet those same metrics. So let's put baby plans in place so that then ultimately we can get to that. But I think it's having those real, and it's uncomfortable, and I get it, those real conversations of, this is what we're going through, and we're taking the time to put a plan together to help, you know, communicate out to the staff so they see things that are coming.
Sure.
Yeah, and there's kind of, it's almost like a little bit of a follow-up, but if you could either of you share about best practices for environments where maybe there have been workforce reductions, reorganizations, or where job security is kind of in the back of the employee's mind, you know, so there might be some added hesitancy or just not feeling safe to share when they're feeling at capacity or set those boundaries. What's some tips there that you might be able to share?
I think I mean, just from my perspective, I would say that I think if the organization has got to be prepared to hear the feedback, if they're already downsizing or experiencing turnover, especially involuntary turnover, that it's putting the pressure on other employees, and they need to hear it so they recognize where the employees are. I think the risk is more on the employer at that point to continue to lose their talent than to address the concerns of employees. And sometimes it's that bold step that I think, I forgot if it was Teresa or Jamie, whoever said that, but it's that bold step to raise your voice and say, I can't, like, this is just too much. I can't handle it right now. So, well, I know that I mean, these are all great questions, and we're happy to connect additionally outside, you know, following up from this cafe here. One thing I do want to share some things that we have coming up. So one of the events that we have coming up, really excited for our group, is that HR Collaborative will be part of a Grand Rapids Tech Week. So in September, on the 17th at WinCat, which is right next to Bridge Street Market here on the west side of Grand Rapids, from 9 to 10:30 a.m., we'll be partnering with Mercantile Bank, Terry Berry, and Wedge to talk about HR tech in Grand Rapids. So super excited. If you haven't already gotten a seat, please reserve your spot now. It's filling up quickly. We're over the halfway mark and filling up quick. So get your seat if you haven't yet. And last but definitely not least, thank you so much for being part of today's Collaborative Cafe. We really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much, Erin, for letting us grill you on one of the hardest topics out there that we are yet to find an expert that has all the answers on. But your insight and feedback was truly valuable and appreciated. Please be on the lookout for an email with that survey link, as well as information on getting registered for Tech Week and putting a save the date on your calendar for our next Collaborative Cafe. Thanks all. Have a great day.